Sweeps Fayemi back into government house. If you destroy or spray Nigerian banknotes, you could go to jail. In international news, Trump-Putin meeting has taken place in Helsinki. Experts analyze the outcome. And in sport, France ruled the world in World Cup soccer.
This is ANN News.
Thank you for staying with us. I am Rotimi Akintunde. So here we are. The much touted Ekiti governorship election has come and gone. Failed prophecies, an incumbent's unanswered prayer for God not to put him to shame. Drama, posturing and war of words, all gone now as a new governor has been elected in Ekiti State. A former minister and a former governor of the state, Kayode Fayemi, has been swept back into government house in Ekiti State. Despite gloomy forecasts of violence and fraud, rigging and selling of votes, the conduct of the election was said to have been free, fair and credible. It was also very peaceful. No real incident of extreme violence was reported. In fact, those who witnessed the process applauded Ekiti voters for good conduct. Of course, there were back and forth charges among the parties for various infractions. Overall, the process worked well and the state has remained peaceful.
Kayode Fayemi of the APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law and scored the highest number of votes, is hereby declared the winner.
After the declaration of result and Fayemi had scaled through, a crowd gathered outside the party secretariat in Ado-Ekiti. There, Governor-elect Kayode Fayemi addressed them saying, with his victory, God had liberated Ekiti State from slavery. With him were his wife and the Deputy Governor-elect, Chief P.C. Egbeyemi. Addressing journalists at the party secretariat, Fayemi said the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Kolapo Olushola, and Governor Ayodele Fashe should emulate him by conceding defeat, just as he did after losing the election 4 years ago.
You're asking me what my advice would be. I mean, experience is the best teacher. My advice would be precisely what I did in 2014.
Well, PDP is not having any of that. It has rejected the poll results, saying the election results were falsified by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in favor of All Progressives Congress. The PDP described APC victory as, quote, daylight robbery, brazen subversion of the will of the people, and direct assault on our democracy, end quote. The party claiming that what it called authentic results from the polling centers show that their candidate won with very comfortable margins. PDP accuses INEC of allowing the result to be altered at the collation centers. The party says it has details of the discrepancies between the, quote, authentic results from the polling units and the false figures eventually announced by INEC, end quote. It has threatened to take the next step and possibly a court action once it had collated all the infractions in the election. President Muhammad Buhari has sent a congratulatory message to Ekiti Governor-elect. He says this is a hard-fought victory. The president advised Kayode Fayemi to be magnanimous in victory, although the contest had been bitter. He says now Fayemi can unfold a new lease of life for the people of Ekiti State through purposeful and responsible governance. The president also had good words for the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and security agencies for their preparedness, fairness, and for the peaceful conduct of the election. He also advised the losing candidates to be gallant in conceding defeat. He said they should use constitutional means to settle in grievances they may have. EFCC was not so magnanimous to Fashe after results were declared. It taunted him in a tweet that he should begin to prepare to visit the commission now that his tenure is ending in 3 months and he would have no more immunity. The commission threatens to reopen investigation into Fashe's billion Naira poultry project during his first term in 2003. Meanwhile, a high court in Abuja has ruled that EFCC has no power to declare anyone wanted without obtaining a court order. Nigerians have also reacted angrily, saying the EFCC announcement was meant to intimidate Fashe In his response to the EFCC comment, Governor Fayose said EFCC is irresponsible and cannot intimidate him. The Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, gave a pass mark to the conduct of the election. The center says there was no evidence of rigging in the results. CDD was one of the many civil society organizations from across the country that held INEC's accreditation to observe the election. After accomplishing its political goals in Ekiti State, the All Progressives Congress has shifted its focus to Delta State, where the state's chapter of the APC was declared it would take over the state next year. The state chapter made the announcement at its expanded State Executive Committee meeting over the weekend in Asaba. State Party Chairman Chief Cyril Ogodo acknowledged the contentious season that had marked the party's recent past, but promised that APC would work hard to dislodge the PDP government, which he called non-performing and corrupt. He said all the aggrieved party members would be reconciled and united so APC will be poised to dislodge the PDP from Delta State. Now to other news. The sad saga of the killing of Nigerians in South Africa has continued. A fresh murder of a Nigerian has occurred near Johannesburg on Thursday, just a day after South African President Cyril Ramaphosa visited Abuja and denounced the killing of Nigerians and other nationals in his country. The Nigerian community in South Africa has expressed shock over the killing of Martin Ebuzome. His murderers and their whereabouts are unknown. In a twist to the story, Godwin Adama, Nigerian Consul General in Johannesburg, said the killing happened in a crime-infested area, that it had nothing to do with xenophobia. He said such crimes often happen in that area. Another Nigerian, Ozumba Tochukwu Lawrence, was killed in South Africa last week. With the latest murder, the number of Nigerians killed in South Africa in the last 2 years has risen to 118. The family of slain NYSC member Angela Igwetu by a police officer apparently will not let the act go under the carpet. They are petitioning against Garki Hospital, where Igwetu reportedly bled to death without the hospital staff lifting a finger to help. They now want the Inspector General of Police to go after the hospital for justice. They insist that autopsy report contradicts hospital claims. Igwetu was shot by a police officer at a checkpoint on her way home with her friends late at night early this month. She would have completed her youth service on that day. Many Nigerians may not know the implications of destroying or mutilating the nation's currency. Well, it can be very expensive and can cost one's freedom. The central bank says anyone who destroys, sprays, mutilates, or sells the Naira notes commits a criminal offense that can send the offender to 5 years in prison or set him back 50,000 naira in fines. The bank says the practice is becoming quite common among Nigerians, and it would ensure that anyone caught would face the full wrath of the law. The bank says the act has caused a shortfall in the lower denominations of the currency, but that it recognizes the important role those denominations play in the marketplace. Business is booming for the Federal Inland Revenue Service as its report is realized 2.5 trillion naira in taxes in the first 6 months of this year. That means it has reached 75% of its target for the year. The chairman of the agency, Dr. Babatunde Fowler, says this is a great improvement over last year. A report bearing these figures was submitted to the Finance Minister, Kemi Adeosun, during the weekend. The Social Rights and Accountability Project, SARAP, has urged the Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, to speak to the allegations of NYSC certificate forgery against her. SARAP says clarifying the allegations will tell everyone that she is committed to doing the right thing as a public official. SARAP's Deputy Director, Timothy Adewale, said a continued failure of the ministers to speak to these allegations would amount to a betrayal of trust and lead to public anger. In the statement, Adewale said such suspicion about a senior government official, if allowed to go unanswered, would weaken public trust in the government's assertion of commitment to transparency and accountability. The Finance Minister has yet to address the matter 2 weeks since being accused of forging her NYSC exemption certificate. Stay with us, ANN News will return after these messages.
our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. Now to African stories. U.S. former President Barack Obama is in Kenya for the first time since he left office in 2017. Obama attended a meeting in Nairobi with President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. Obama also met with opposition leader Raila Odinga, who has agreed to work with Kenyatta after so much disagreement since 2017. Obama will inaugurate the South Eco Foundation project today and also deliver the 16th Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture in South Africa. Congo's President Joseph Kabila has appointed General Jan Numbi as new army chief. Numbi is under international sanctions by United States, European Union and Switzerland for alleged killings of civilians by forces under him many years ago. He has also been accused of abuses and selling weapons to rebel groups. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has given ministers a 2-week deadline to come up with ways of reducing the problems of high fuel prices in the country. Ramaphosa's administration is facing pressure from consumers as a result of a hike in fuel prices and value-added tax rate and food price. He has also agreed to revise sections of the budget to ensure an accommodation is made for reducing prices and VAT. He's also holding a major investment summit in October. 6 people have died in Cameroon from a cholera outbreak that has infected 43 people. Health Minister André Mamafoda said in a statement over the weekend cases of cholera were documented in 4 districts since 2 months ago in northern regions. He says 1 case of the disease had been found in the capital Yaoundé. Cholera is caused by bacterium transmitted through contaminated food or drinking water. It causes acute diarrhea, with children particularly at risk. An outbreak of the disease killed more than 750 people across Cameroon in 2010. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Eritrea's President Isaias Afwerki arrived at the ceremony on Monday to reopen Eritrea's embassy in the Ethiopian capital 1 week ago. The leaders of the African nations declared a state of war over after 2 decades. They have since moved quickly to cement a rapprochement. Countries, including the United States, have praised the end of the state of war between the 2 countries as a welcome development for the strategic Horn of Africa region and beyond. The leaders call new peace example to Africa. A car bomb attempt was foiled on Saturday when a suspected car was shot at by police and exploded near the presidential palace in Mogadishu. In the past, Al-Shabaab have used car bombs to target government buildings in the capital. Al-Shabaab wants to topple Somalia's central government, expel the African peacekeeping force and establish a government on its own interpretation of Islamic Sharia laws. The Gambian president, for the first time in 37 years, has handed over security of the presidency to the police force. Interior Minister Habib Drame said the security of the presidency is now in the care of the police because of the trust President Barrow has in the system. Under the past regime, the public image of the police was quite negative because of the perception of corruption. Reports say the police is now respected to demonstrate a level of discipline and trust to regain its past glory. Telecom Egypt has signed a memorandum of understanding with Liquid Telecom to enable the group complete Africa's terrestrial fiber network across the continent. Liquid Telecom has been building a fiber network across southern Africa covering Botswana, DR Congo, Lesotho, South Africa, Zambia and Zimbabwe. The network will be linked from Sudan into Egypt's network via a new cross-border interconnection to bring together 60,000-kilometer network from Cape Town to all the borders in Sudan and Egypt. No time frame or estimated cost has been provided for the completion of the project. We will be back after this short break. Stay with us.
Breaking news. MTN gives 2,000 2,000% bonus for reactivating your MTN SIM. That's right. If you haven't used your MTN SIM for 45 days or more, recharge now and get 2,000% bonus. That's right, 2,000% bonus for your first recharge of every month.
Welcome back now to international stories. American President Donald Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin held their long-expected meeting earlier today in Helsinki, Finland, after throwing into doubt long-standing assumptions about the West's political, military and trade alliances. The U.S. president began the day by blaming the United States, not Russia, for tensions between the two countries. It is not clear how he felt comfortable with that, especially since the U.S. Justice Department had just indicted 12 Russian intelligence agents on charges of hacking the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign in an attempt to aid Trump. Trump had told reporters before the meeting started that they would discuss trade, nuclear arms and China. He did not mention Russia's interference in the 2016 U.S. elections that brought him to power. The summit ends Mr. Trump's week-long European trip, in which he broke just about every diplomatic norm. It caused discomfort at the NATO summit meeting, and during his London visit, he was asking NATO allies to spend more on defense. He also said Prime Minister Theresa May was messing up Brexit. He said the best way May could handle Brexit is to sue the European Union over the issue. He then called the European Union a fool of the United States. American political observers, regardless of affiliation, had feared that Mr. Trump, who said he needed no preparation for the meeting, could be an easy target for manipulation by Mr. Putin, a former intelligence agent. Trump had refused to criticize him. The death toll from a suicide attack on an election rally in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province rose to 149 over the weekend. It is said to be one of the deadliest attacks in the South Asian national's history. As campaigning steps up for general elections in just under 2 weeks, bombings across Pakistan have stoked fears of more violence in the country of 208 million. Political rallies can draw tens of thousands of people in Pakistan. A militant group, Islamic State, has claimed responsibility for Friday's bombing. The Balochistan Awami Party's provincial candidate, Siraj Rizani, was killed in the bombing. The sad stories about migrants on the Mediterranean continue. Another 8 migrants, including 6 children, were found dead on Monday after suffocating from petrol fumes from a truck container in which they were parked on the West Libyan coast. Another 19 migrants recovered from the container were in critical condition and had been taken to a local hospital for treatment. This was made known by the Security Directorate in the town Ozwara, which is one of the points along Libya's western coastline, where smugglers and traffickers hold migrants before putting them on boats to try to cross to Europe. The migrants were from various sub-Saharan African and Arab countries, as well as Pakistan and Bangladesh. They had been shot inside a refrigerated container designed for transporting meat or fish. All this in the interest of finding greener pastures. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker has said on Monday China could open its economy if it wished. The European Union is calling on countries to avoid a trade war even as pressure mounts on Beijing over its industrial policies. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, while hosting Juncker and European Council President Donald Tusk, and Beijing stressed the need to uphold free trade and multilateralism as the United States and China become increasingly mired in a trade dispute with no signs of negotiations in the horizon. U.S. President Donald Trump has warned he may ultimately impose tariffs on more than $500 billion worth of Chinese goods. That is nearly the total amount of last year's U.S. import from China. This to combat what America says is Beijing's trade abuses. Another black man was killed in Chicago on Saturday by police. This has brought out thousands of residents to protest what they call police brutality against blacks. Many of the protests showed their anger towards a system they call guilty. 37-year-old Harith Augustus was killed in the South Shore neighborhood of Chicago. The city's police patrol chief, Fred Waller, said Augustus was shot after police officers on foot tried to question him about a bulge in his waistband that signaled he was armed. They said Augustus became combative and broke loose from the officers. Police later released the body camera video they say showed Augustus allegedly reaching for his weapon when he was shot. Stay with us. We will return with sports in a moment.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to sports. And what else is there to talk about in sports? The World Cup, of course. It is no news now that France are the world champions in football. They won the cup for the second time in spectacular style on Sunday, beating Croatia 4-2. It was one of the most entertaining and action-packed finals for decades. After an own goal by Mario Mandzukic, France's big guns delivered on the biggest stage of all as Antonio Griezmann, Paul Pogba and teenager Kylian Mbappe hit the target. Even Perisic and Mandzukic replied for Croatia, who ended beaten but unbowed after making much of the running in their first appearance in the final. Celebrations erupted in France as thousands gathered at the Eiffel Tower with large shows and revelings across the city and around the country. The celebration started from Moscow, where President Emmanuel Macron was present at the game. The streets of Zagreb in Croatia were also filled with citizens who celebrated the accomplishment of their team. They had come very far in their first bid for the World Cup. Congratulations to the winners and to the runners-up. Finally tonight, a few days ago, Nigeria Labour Congress disrupted activities of MTN Nigeria by picketing its offices because the company's employees are not unionized. MTN says NLC members attacked and even injured some of its workers and damaged equipment at some of its locations. NLC says the action will continue. In a statement on its Instagram page, MTN says its concern is the safety and well-being of its staff. MTN also stated it does not prevent its staff from joining any union, but that it owes its employees an obligation to ensure they are not forced to join any union except as contained in the Nigerian Constitution. The Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators of Nigeria, ALTEN, condemned the picketing, damage to equipment and disruption of MTN operations. It emphasized that employees of its members are free to join or form associations if they so choose. We are discussing labor issues on our social media platform, ANN Africa TV. Join the conversation. Are workers obligated to join unions? What role should the federal government play in this instance? Go to ANN Africa TV and express yourself. That's ANN News this evening. Thanks for joining us. For details on these and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.net, and our social media platforms, ANN Africa TV. I am Rotimi Akintunde. Have a pleasant evening.